Welcome to the show, Sanjay Nair. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Tell me, talking of courses and fairways, private equity, finding it hard right now to be comfortably on the fairway?
The investments you already have, I think those are on the fairway, and you just got to keep at them every day, be very focused. And I think finding new deals is not easier. By the time you triangulate finding a good quality promoter, good quality management, good valuations, yeah, it's quite difficult. But I think it's more because the growth in the economy itself is sort of slowed down.
Yeah.
So people don't need the money, and therefore, we guys have to obviously back Indian entrepreneurs. So when they begin to invest, I'm sure we will have a lot of deals there.
That's an interesting point that you make about entrepreneurship. But before that, you talked about the slowdown in the economy. Obviously, we're catering now for 6 to 7% kind of GDP growth, which would considerably lower the kind of returns or expectations that private equity may have from companies that they invest in.
That is true, but I think if you take a 5-6 year view, I think you revert back to the proper growth rate. Even for India, I mean, if you look at the secular trends, those haven't changed. So the real issue is that the short term looks a little uncertain, but you also get better opportunities and better valuations in these times than you get later on. So I think it's still a good time to invest. You just got to find people who've got great growth plans or good restructuring plans or whatever.
Yeah, or restructuring. That's largely because people do have restructuring plans now as they are reworking their business models or deciding what assets to throw and what to keep.
Yep, they're going to rationalize a lot more, which I think they should. I would be really surprised if private equity gets treated differently than FII from a negative point of view. I mean, that I think would be a terrible mistake. Secondly, I think private equity has a much longer term horizon. So all that the industry needs is clarity of rules on what will be the tax.
Yeah.
GAR, I can't comment on GAR because that's something which is, frankly, the right step to take for the long run for the country anyway.
True. I mean, everybody's in principle agreed with that. That in the long term, this is a good step. And if FIIs have gotten used to paying these kind of taxes in other parts of the world, why should India be an exception? Which, to be honest, is a fairly valid argument. But the question is the timing of it. Was this the ideal time for the government to bring it up? And, what it's done to the markets temporarily, even if so? They
had talked about GAR, in fact, 2 years ago. So it's not a big surprise to anyone, frankly. And you've got to start at some point in time. And there's always going to be that painful transition period.
And FII so posturing.
Whether it's this year or next year or whichever year, the fact is that if you get clarity on tax rates, I don't see why it should matter. And secondly, it's all about the Mauritius route, which frankly is a very valid route. It is there, it's available, and people are doing it the right way. So I think it's a little
And both
difficult.
Governments are in the loop in it.
It's a difficult question for me to answer because that's a real policy issue. But I think India is a capital importing country. You just have to be mindful of the fact that you don't want to shun away capital right now when you need it. But I think in principle terms, anti-avoidance is something you need to move towards anyway. So,
so just too bad that it comes at a time when the rest of the world is in crisis. Our markets are shaky, but just too bad.
And therefore, I think if we get clarity of tax rates, at least for the future transactions, there'll be a lot of, I think, enthusiasm.
Well, what was the most exciting phase of your banking career at Citi?
When I moved from India, when I moved to the UK, when I moved to the UK to run our equity platform, and then I moved to the US to run the fixed income platform, I think that was the most exciting time because, frankly, I'd never done any of that stuff. Good old corporate finance people from India. But those were days when Citi picked up people and really moved them around laterally. And I think finally the best, which is the most exciting part, was being on the trading floor at Solomon for 5 years, or Solomon Citi combined for 5 years, and heading up the sales and trading outfit for fixed income was sort of the best. Learned a lot about the markets, and that's given me a huge change in perspective even after coming back to India. Yeah. And
was India a route shock when you got back at that time?
No. I mean, I came back willingly. It was not a route shock. Actually, in 01 and 02, things were just sort of
lifting themselves out of the tech bubble.
A lot of tailwinds here in 02, 03, and it was a pretty good time. Yeah. And I think we've built a terrific franchise at Citi, which is still going great guns, absolutely.
Let me ask you this. When you were in Citi in India, who did you turn to for any mentorship that you needed?
At the Citi job, when you start doing these kind of jobs, it does get a little alone there. I mean, it does get a little lonely. But I would say, in the marketplace here, you could easily talk to someone like Aditya very often. You could talk to Nanupam Nani, who was the previous CEO, who's always available. But, more importantly, in Citi, you can actually access the overseas network quite a bit. And having come from overseas We knew the network pretty well. And that's what you would do. I mean, you know, when you have the whole enterprise, there's not any one person who can advise you, but you can call up the product heads, you can call up, you know, various industry heads and get advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, within India, I think, you know, old friends and old bosses, they were the best.
If you look at the economy today, do you think that we've actually lost our way a bit from what has been a high growth trajectory? A 9% kind of talk down to 8.5%, something that had become a norm, has suddenly shifted focus, and we're now at the edge of the green, not anymore on the green.
No, of course we are off the green, absolutely, there's no doubt about it. I think the larger point now is that as things stand today, it's a bit of a structural issue, and combine that with the cyclical issues we are facing, it's sort of a pretty bad timing to have both the issues. Now structurally, I think we've got a bit of a problem, right? I mean, investment spending is down. In fact, even savings are down. People are buying more gold, and of course the rest gets mopped up by the fiscal deficit. So you've got a capital problem.
You don't think we're making too much out of the deficit in a growth economy, or are we? Because there are countries around the world that don't have a deficit of around 5.6%. We're talking of double-digit deficits, and they don't seem to have that kind of
you're right. I think you're right. I think we should talk of this as more of a opportunity where you can actually improve the revenue side. Because if you look at debt to GDP, it's not that bad. The real issue is on the revenue side, and I think we've really got to attack the revenue side now. And there are so many opportunities that are available to the government to get the revenue side going, whether it's the taxation side, the whole GST angle, government assets. There's so much that one can do. But I agree with you, if you just keep focusing on fiscal alone, or just the debt side of it, the expenditure side, you know, it's frankly unrealistic, because it's not easy to now cut subsidies and take away the goodies that you've given.
Yeah.
So you've really got to look for new avenues of sort of revenues. And I think India has a whole lot of avenues, not to mention that tax to GDP is still not a great number. So I think you're right, because in a high growth economy, you can work your way out of this if you get the growth back and you get the tax collections and all the revenue mechanisms working.
Do you think that, again, if the government makes some effort to open up the economy, bring in reforms, will we get back there? And is reform of opening up the economy to banking, insurance, retail the real answer, or is it a hype?
I think in the short run, you need a few confidence boosting measures, frankly. You need to change the sentiment right now. So for that, I think getting a GST done, getting some short-term issues on power resolved, maybe a few announcements of the FDI side, getting the taxation thing out of the way. Just 3-4 simple things I think will change the sentiment. I think that's the short-term thing. The long-term, there is no doubt. I mean, you've got to have proper revenue/fiscal reforms. I think you need reforms on the land side. And you need reforms on the financial sector.
But when foreign investors come to India, that's the first thing they have. It's almost like a rant. They non-stop say, open up the economy, open up the economy. Do you think that that's pushing it a bit?
No, I think economy is open enough. I don't think that's an issue. We have a domestic issue, so we've got to solve the domestic problems.
Yeah.
Got to get the confidence back for people to reinvest again. And this is Indians investing in India, okay?
Okay.
We've got to get that back.
How did you shift to KKR? At what stage of your life did you say, okay, enough banking?
Couple of years before I left, I think this India job was probably the best job that I did in the firm in sort of my career. And then the question becomes, in all these multinational firms, as you know, is that you've got to move on. I mean, you can't be in one place for 7 years, 9 years, 11 years, and I was already finishing 5 at that time. We're done 9, 10 years overseas, come back, you know, it doesn't make sense again to go overseas, at least for us. And typically, you know, in multinational firms...
Also because sometimes you think that if you are in the India story, you're likely to give better returns than in places where there is a slowdown across the world.
No, I never think like that. I was thinking more from just a career point of view. And a little bit from a family point of view, you know, moving again, shipping off to the US or Japan or something, and then coming back 8, 10 years later, again you get uprooted, you know, and Bombay is not easy to settle, to find a place, to find even a club membership. So, you know, you sort of just about get rooted and you get uprooted again. It was just not worth it. So I think when the KKR, the whole private equity thing was evolving, it was a terrific opportunity to apply what one had learned in managing enterprises.
How did you meet Henry Kravis and what clinched the deal?
Met him through, you know, a couple of people we know in common, and we talked for quite some time. I think they're just great people there. I mean, listening to just what they've done for companies globally and what they've done to the industry in private equity was just hugely aspirational. At some point, I think I began to really want to do that job when I didn't have a job offer, of course. So there came the stage when you really want to get hired. Then when the thing materialized, then you get a little bit nervous. You know, I never left a firm in my life. Citi was the only place I worked. Then that came the nervousness kind of phase.
Yeah, the second job in life.
But I think by 2008, it was becoming pretty clear that banking wasn't going to remain the same. You know, the dynamics are changing. And then I began speaking to the bank for some time. And it was very easy. It took us like 8-9 months to disengage. But I think it all went off pretty well, yeah.
Do you think that whole consumption story, which I keep coming back to, it's been the cornerstone of India's success with both FDI and foreign institutional investors? We need to build upon that, but what stops us is inflation. And the minute inflation comes in the way, we tend to sort of lose our ground on what we're doing with the consumption story. What could be a game changer for it?
As I keep saying, you know, you've got to build a supply side. You know, this whole supply-induced inflation, there is no shortcut to this. You've got to build the capacity, whether it's education, as you mentioned, or it's skilling, or it's, you know, infrastructure, whatever you. So we've got a long way to go in terms of building the capacity side.
But do you think our policymakers are a bit clueless because the numbers are too big?
I think they know everything. Look, they're very smart. But I think they're just constrained in terms of, you know, picking up the pace on these issues. And they're constrained for the reasons that you and I know, which is really the political consensus is not there.
But, you know, you talked about this whole political situation where we're looking to build consensus, we're finding it hard. We're talking essentially of a 6-month window because we're already moving into election cycle. Next year, we're going to have one budget, likely to be a populist one. The following will be a vote on account because 2014 are elections. Hopefully before that, we won't have them. But the point is, if we don't act in the next 6 months, we'll quite miss the bus entirely.
I think, you know, with the consensus, if it builds around between the opposition parties, the ruling party, within the ruling party, I think then the 6-month window argument may or may not even hold because I think people will realize you need to get things done, so let's get on with it.
But is coalition politics really what is against the growth story?
I don't know much about the politics. I just think that strong, determined leadership can get a lot done. And, you know, a lot of our things that need to be approved today are not necessarily, they have to go to the parliament. A lot of them can be, you know, executed and signed off. So I think we just need to get on with it, and I think strong, determined leadership with a high degree of conviction, what needs to be done, I don't think anybody will come in the way. That's my sense. Again, look, I'm not a politician, but I just have a funny feeling that there's such a consensus in India today that good things are signed off and gotten on with it. I really wonder who will come and stop it. Yeah.
Tell me, with all of this economic pressure around, how does it have an impact on leadership in general? Because you've got crisis. There's a job market which is extremely volatile suddenly. Growth targets are slowing and reducing. Consumption story is a bit inflated. How hard does it become for a leader in any field in country today to actually grapple with all of this?
No, it's quite difficult. Look, first and foremost, you've got to keep your people charged up. And you've got to make sure that they stay focused and not, you know, get disillusioned. I think just talking of the India story as a long-term story all the time also becomes a bit of a, you know, passe, you know, the same thing again and again.
So people I think, stop believing you after a point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking of your internal, you know, I'm sure you're referring to an internal organization.
Yes.
So I think what you've got to keep focus on in these times is to look for opportunities for growth, if you've got the cash. And you're seeing moves like what the Birla Group just made on retail. I think that's a great move. I mean, I can imagine his retail firm must be so excited that they've made a move in a time like this. So that helps. You know, we recently did something with Dalmia Cement, one of our investee companies, you know, is doing something in terms of cement acquisition. So people, those who have cash and a clear strategy, I think now is a great time to sort of lead from the front. And finally, I think, look, very important in India is that everybody's got to be very focused on their costs, revenues, market shares, you know, keeping a close eye on productivity.
Because if our value edge has to stay, the costs have to come down.
Which frankly a lot of us, you know, lost in the good years, 06 through even 08 and 09, and thought we recovered the fastest. But, you know, if the companies don't stay competitive, don't have an eye on margins, don't have a clear eye on market share, then it can be, you know, quite a problem. And I think IT companies are doing a great job on that front. I think some of the consumer companies are doing a fabulous job.